buying your first house is hard. The second one is the hardest. What do you do with the original one? And that becomes this domino effect. If you can figure that part out, then you have the ability to get the next one and the next one. You can buy a $150,000 or $250,000 house, just knowing it's not going to be a forever house. Having that purpose, that vision of where you want to go is so important because...
Welcome to the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast, where we dive deep into the intersection of career, family, and finances. Learn the mindsets, tips, and strategies to help you on your personal journey to build a life of abundance and purpose for you and your family. Now here's your host, Aaron Amin. Welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I'm joined by mortgage lender, author, investor, and a fellow father of twins, Mr. Joel Farrell. Joel is also the host of the Strive for 25 podcast, which he released every week since September 2022. In addition to his almost 20 years in the mortgage industry, Joel also built a multi-million-dollar portfolio of his own using the Stair method, which he explains in the show. His philosophy around money, savings, and building wealth is beautifully simple and relatable, and it's a message that can serve investors at any point in their journey. This episode offers a great mix of personal stories and tactical tips on how to build wealth one step at a time. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I am joined by Joel Farrell. Joel goes by the Stair method guy on X, which is where we met, along with many other investors that you may have heard on this show. We have a thriving community of real estate investors that engage and interact with each other and support each other. But this is the first time we've actually met camera to camera. I'm really excited to have you on the show. Before I butcher any more of your introduction, would love for you to just share a bit about yourself to the audience in your own words.
Yeah, we share something in common. We both have a set of twins. I've got 4-year-old twin boys, not identical. You've got some that are younger and also a third. So we only have 2. That happened in 2019 for me, which changed my life. But I started my investing journey in 2009, bought my first house, scared to death. Scared to death. That's a whole kind of a different conversation. Built a portfolio along the way, got into some short-term rental, commercial, bunch of different stuff. I wrote a book, started a podcast about wealth building. It's called Strive for 25. And the basic premise is hey, you know what? If you can save 25% of your income, you're going to have options to invest. But in this environment, it's harder than ever with the cost of living. We talk a lot about increasing income is the first step on that path. And I work in the lending world, been doing it since 2006. And that's given me a unique perspective on investing and being able to see clients that are at the top, at the bottom, different parts of their journey, and be able to share some experiences. And I'm unique in my world because I live in St. Louis and I'm licensed in 20 states. So I see East Coast, West Coast, Mid Coast, Southeast. I see all these different things happening. And it's a really cool thing, cool experience, but also a unique perspective that I can pass on to clients as well.
Awesome, man. Yeah, you've got a diverse range of things going on. So you're a podcast host, you're an author, you're a lender. And one thing I didn't hear you quite retrace is you're also a fellow investor, right? You have your own portfolio.
Yeah.
What does that look like these days?
Yeah. So I've got a short-term rental in Florida that actually I have on the market to sell. Yeah, I've been selling some stuff this year, a couple of multifamilies, some commercial buildings, some single-family condos, things like that, and just reallocating some things. The stair-step method part of it, I mentioned I was scared to death in 2009 because I worked in a commission job and rates were coming down from like the 7s to 6s to the 5s in 2009, and so rates were low. And they had a grant, actually, an $8,000 grant. And so I utilized that to buy my first house, and it was a $230,000 condo. So it was new construction. I felt like it was over my means at that time. And I was scared of that because I'm in a commission job. If I don't know where my paycheck is coming from in 2 or 3 months, let alone in a year. So I was very intentional about purchasing in an area that if something happens to me or my job, that I knew that I could rent it out quickly. And along the way, I'm an econ major. I'm a numbers kind of person. And so you read the books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, bunch of different other things. And I'm seeing people in my job investing in real estate here that it's not everybody. Maybe a certain 10, 20% of people are in the game. And so I bought my next house in 2013 and naturally turned the old one into a rental. It was a great spot to do that. And I did it again a couple years later and I did it again. And then after because I'm a homeowner in 2009, but 2013, I become an official landlord. So in 2017 is when I started to realize, oh, this is actually working. Values are going up. Renters are paying the balances down. if I can just cash flow on, if I can just cash flow even on this, I'm going to be in good shape because these are properties that are in more of A class neighborhoods, A to B neighborhoods. So the equity it's an equity play, not much so much a cash flow play. And being in finance, I'm seeing people's entire financial profile, which is, in my opinion, one of the most unique positions on the landscape of industry because you have financial advisors that they see your profile, but they only see a part of it on the investing side. Insurance people, other professionals, but we see everything: your debt, your collections, your bankruptcy, your assets, your this or that. So we help people buy houses, we help people refinance, but at the same time, we also have an opportunity to be able to provide additional guidance and mentorship and inspiration for someone to build wealth. And yes, we provide mortgage financing as a very box of a land of what we do. My background of building wealth through real estate and stair step means just buy one, buy the next one, turn the other one, turn it. You can do that 4 times in 8 years. You're building a $3 million portfolio. Easy. And as an easy example, in the book that I self-published, I didn't know what I was doing. I just decided to do it just because I decided to. It's called How Literally Anyone Can Become a Millionaire. I chronicle a parable that's loosely tied to a couple clients of buying a $150,000 property, 250, 350, 450 over a certain period of time. And that's a $3 million portfolio over 30 years. And all by just knowing the blueprint, knowing the formula. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, so let's dissect that a little bit. So is the premise that you buy a house, you live in it for a period of time, and then you turn it into a rental, or you sell it and trade up into another one?
That's a great question because I have a group of high school people that I still keep up. There's 7 of us. So we went to Mexico for our 40th birthday. And it's just interesting because you look at all the percentages, okay? What percentage of people are going to be entrepreneurs? What percentage of people are going to be real estate investors? What percentage of people are going to be millionaires or whatever the numbers are? I don't know what they are, but there's 7 of us. Of the 7, they all got married at 24, 26, 27. I got married at 30. I'm the only one that's a real estate investor of the group. Everybody's got a W-2 job. Everyone bought houses, and I helped some of them buy houses, but every single one of them, when they bought the next one, they sold the original one. And it makes sense because for most people, you need the cash from the sale to be able to have for down payment on the next one. And then not only that, from a debt to income ratio standpoint, to qualify for both payments, having the old one gone before you buy the new one makes things simpler. I always talk about this. Yes, buying your first house is hard. The second one is the hardest because you have to navigate what do you do with the original one. And there's ways to be able to attack the debt to income ratio part of it, where if you do a conventional loan, put 5% down, you can use a lease to offset the old payment. But the hard part is the cash. If you have enough cash for down payment on the new one, that's the separator. And that becomes this domino effect. If you can figure that part out, then you have the ability to get the next one and the next one. And in this environment right now, the affordability metrics have just flown off the wrong way. The next generation is just, they're not going to be able to afford houses at this level, this pace. Home prices have quadrupled in the last, I don't know, 10, 20 years. Median income is not, it's not done that. So you need more money. You got to have more income to qualify. So the average age of a first-time home buyer in 2019 was about 27. And that makes sense. In this moment in time, based on 2023 data, it's 36. So it's gone up, what is that, 7, 9, 8, 9 years of age. And that makes sense too because it's harder to qualify, you need more money. And I've had a couple of people ask me, what is the 25? You got to be 25 years old? Strive for 25? You got to be 25 years old? No, it's 25% of your income. But I use that as an example because if you're 25 years old and you can get into your first house and you do have a perspective of wanting to build a portfolio and use the stair step method, you could have a 10-year head start. Can you imagine having a 10-year head start on the average person? And if I've talked to some people that are making $70,000, $80,000 of income, depending on the job, and you don't have to buy the end home. You can buy a $150,000 or $250,000 house, just knowing it's not going to be a forever house. And obviously, depending on the market, like I live in the Midwest, so it's a different market than say San Francisco or DC or even Atlanta or New York, et cetera. Having that purpose, that vision of where you want to go is so important because we're talking about somebody who's 25. Nah, I got to go save the $25,000. How am I going to do that? If you know what you want to do, you know why it's important. When your why is strong enough, the how figures itself out. And that's why I see some people living with their parents longer, stockpiling cash. And that's the stuff that gets me excited.
No, I love that. So much to unpack there. I think that it doesn't occur to a lot of people, the idea that you can buy a house to live in and then turn it into a rental. It's just not something that people are aware of unless they're surrounded or exposed to that idea by another friend who's an investor, or whether they read a book or find stuff on social media. I think once that idea is planted, it's pretty hard to ignore. We did something similar, not quite as methodical as what you're talking about, at least not on purpose, but like we bought our first house in 2017 as a primary. My wife, we weren't married at the time, but we bought it. We got married while we lived there. It was our perfect little starter home to just start our life together. And over time, we realized that we could turn that into a rental. We bought another investment property kind of on the same timeline you did. I think you said it was about 3 or 4 years after you bought your primary that you ended up getting a rental. But once our identity started to shift towards, hey, real estate investing could be a part of our long term plan, then we started to see all these new options appear in front of us. And that whole idea of buying a house as a primary resident with a lower down payment, and then you get more favorable interest rates. As long as you stay there for a year, you can turn it into a rental, and you can even get a HELOC on it while you live there, depending how much equity you have in it. So there's just a number of advantages of turning your primary residence into a tool, and especially if you do it over a patient timeline, like what you're suggesting. Like if you just do that 4 times throughout your 20s, 30s, or even early 40s, you're still just positioning yourself really well for the long term. So I love that intentionality. And then as far as saving automated savings, 25% is a great target. And I think I heard you talk about this elsewhere, but if you're aiming for that, even if you hit 12% or 15%, that's still a good thing. It still makes a difference over a long period of time. And just by having that kind of attitude of, hey, I'm going to treat a percentage of my income like it doesn't exist, and I'm going to automate it into some sort of savings, there's very few downsides I can think of if you can teach yourself to operate your finances that way. So I love all the stuff that you talk about on your podcast and just through the education you provided. And I haven't read your book yet, but I want to go back and read it. So you have a really unique perspective as a lender. Like you said, people's financial profiles, the good, the bad, the ugly. And not only do you see them and learn from them, but you help those people navigate into the appropriate types of loan. So what have you learned? I guess maybe retrace like the beginning of that journey as a lender. Like how did you get into that space? And then what have you learned that you think really helps you in your own investing journey?
First thing, I was waiting tables at the melting pot when I got out of college, and I had a regular. Her name's Kim Dotson. If you're out there, thank you, thank you. But she brought her kids in for report cards, and she worked at Citibank. And after a year of coming in, she would request me every time they came in, and she said, "I'm going to get you a job." I'm like, "Okay." So she got an interview set up. I showed up. I didn't know what a mortgage was, but I showed up because I've been interviewing for different economics jobs, analyst jobs, all kinds of different things. And I went to junior college. I played baseball. I went to Washington University in St. Louis, which is like at the time, like a top 10 school, big med school, whatever. But I went to night school and played baseball, and I had graduated with a quarter of the type of student loans that most people do. So I had a unique journey that got there, and I got the job. And that WashU degree, I think, helped massively because I didn't have experience. So I say that out loud because the degrees do matter sometimes. But yeah, they had a great training program. It's inside sales. But the department that I worked with was with financial advisors. So it's Morgan Stanley now, but at the time it was Smith Barney. And so here I am, 23, talking to high net worth clients about financing. And I didn't know what that guy was doing. But you learn quick and you figure it out. And that was an amazing experience. And that kind of started me on this kind of national perspective of working with clients over the phone. And I did that through 2010 and 11. And then I got into outside sales, and that's a whole different story of that journey and ups and downs and finding a niche. Seeing that in the same day, I would be talking to somebody that's buying a Florida condo for $3 million. And at the same time, talking to somebody that is in a different part of the country that's buying an $80,000 house with credit scores that are 580 and trying to just piece it together and just seeing both sides of that. And that's something that still stuck with me, even to this day, of some of the things that I'm doing from a event standpoint, from a content standpoint. And I'll come back to that later. But the real estate journey, I didn't really realize what I was doing until probably 2017. I was just doing the job, doing the business, trying to make money. And fear was a big part of that. Like ADHD brain, like sitting at a desk all day, punching numbers, not my thing, but being on the phone, talking to people, helping people. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I love to do. And having that kind of that commission job just keeps that adrenaline pumping. That's just what I needed. Not right for everybody. And so when I talk about today, okay, you have this flat plane of income, expenses, and savings. And so many people are struggling to save money. I think 56% of Americans don't have $1,000 saved. 50, that's over half. And cost of living is just gone crazy. And I won't bore with numbers, but so in the book, I give a parable about this person who built a portfolio, and it's tied to a couple of people that I helped on the way. And this person was making like $40,000, $45,000 a year of income. And when you do the math on that, right? Okay, $3,400 a month gross income times 70% is their net income. Car, rent, gas, food, like when you add it all up, there's not much left. And so this person was saving no money. But he came to me, this is probably in 2016, I think, when this initial conversation happened. But I want to buy a house. Dude, you're not saving any money. Like, how are you going to buy a house? I want to buy a house. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm going to buy a house. I'm like, okay, cool. So the savings equation is very simple. Income minus your expenses equals your savings. Okay, your expenses, you have nothing to cut. And there's so much content out there about budgeting and cut your Starbucks and cut this and meal prep and whatever. But like at the end of the day, there's only so much return you're going to get on that time because it's a finite thing that you can cut. Now, the other part of that equation is income. What if you can increase income? And that becomes potentially an exponential return on your time because you can create a lot of income if you focus on the right things. And so for this person, earlier on in their career, didn't have a lot of skills. They got a second job and they started making an extra 1,000 plus a month. And for them, they were very strategic and they just stockpiled that cash. And so they came to me with a 580 credit score, 550, whatever it was. And so they started chipping away at some credit cards. Scores went up, saved money. And then about 8 months later, they bought the first house. And then that 150 range. And that was the beginning of this path. And that saving $100 a month, right? Putting it on autopilot. It sounds so cliche and so boring, but it's probably the most important thing of the entire puzzle. Most important thing. And, I bought a multi-million-dollar beach property in 2021. I bought 4 families. I bought a commercial building. I've done things that are pretty cool. But the most important thing that I ever did was focusing on my vision, my purpose, my process, the little bitty things at the beginning, because I couldn't have gone there without the foundation. And so saving $100 a month, if you're making $40,000 a year and you can save $100 a month, most people, including myself, I look back, you know what? It's just $100 a month. I'm going to go to the bar. It's just $100 a month. I'm going to go buy this steak dinner. It's just $100 a month. I'm going to go spend the money because I'll make up for it later. I got time. And when I got serious about what I wanted to be able to do, because I was fearful, I didn't want to do that job all day, my entire career. I didn't want to do that job. That was part of the fear, the energy that propelled me to do more. Like I know back in 2009 and 10, when we came out of the crash, I would get up, I would go to work till 6. I would go grab some food with some people at the job, maybe even a cocktail or 2, maybe a shot, hang out for a couple hours, and then go back and get some more work done because we were busy. I was like, you got to get it while it's there. And that energy, extra energy, came from fear of not wanting to do that job. I wanted to be able to stockpile cash as much as I could so I could not have to rely on that job, not have to be clocking in for 40 years. And so that energy, it comes from somewhere, and having that purpose, that vision in your why is so important. So that $100 a month, if you can acknowledge that, is so important because it's not going to make you $1 million today, but if you can save $100 today at 22 or 27 or 32, if you're starting over 30, 34, 44, whatever it is, it's a building block. And if you want to stack things, you got to have stable blocks to stack on top of it too. So if you can build a little bitty habit, that's the foundation to build the next one. And this perspective that I'm talking about, I didn't have this at 25. And if you're 25, you're probably not going to listen to me, and that's okay. But if you hear it, maybe when you hear it again and again and again and again, at some point, it'll matter.
I think amazing points all across, and you have to be ready to hear the message, but you're never going to hear the message if you're not in a room with people or exposed to people who are thinking about these things, right? When most 25-year-olds their friends are out at the bars and maybe a couple years into their corporate jobs and they're just focused on like living life and having fun. I don't mean to overgeneralize, but obviously there's other people who in their 20s they choose to try and accelerate and invest in their personal development, their financial foundations, and those can be important forks in the road. I have been very open about my story. I worked the first 10 years of my career in the concerts industry, and it was lots of partying, lots of late nights and schmoozing. And I thought it was leading somewhere. I was working 70, 80 hours a week, Monday through Friday at the office, then be out at shows 3, 4, sometimes 5 nights a week. I had a lot of fun until I didn't. And I realized that I was being the actual hourly pay that I was making based on the amount I was working was insanely low. The amount of upside in my career was pretty low at the time. And I realized that I wasn't really doing anything that was going to have a long term outsized impact on my and my family's future. And that's ultimately what drove me to real estate. But I didn't figure that out until I was 29. I had a little stint with, I did inpatient rehab and kicked my drinking habit, which had become more than a habit. And that was the spark for my real estate career. But I'm lucky that my parents taught me about investing when I was young. I was in, even in my run and gun and party days, I was the one out of our friend group that would be thinking about stuff like automated savings, credit card rewards, like how can I get the best squeeze on my dollar? So at least I was geared to think like that, but I wish that I had come to the realization of some of the stuff you've mentioned earlier. So that option does exist for people if they're willing to listen, but you have to be ready for the message. But the other part I wanted to ask you about is you've mentioned the word fear probably 10 times so far. And when we think about it, you said you started in 2006 when you were 23. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that is an interesting time to go into a business, which you said is commission based. It's based on the health of the real estate market. And the fact that you came out on the other side of that and stayed in that game in and of itself is impressive. But I've got to imagine that put some scars on you and your thinking pretty early. Can you talk about that, like, first 3, 4 years, like, riding the wave into the recession and then watching that, being in the career path that you are in?
Yeah, working at a company like Citibank, you're a little bit insulated from what was going on around you. If you were a broker and out there sourcing business and then sending it to XYZ Bank, Countrywide, Citibank, and then the brokers on the streets that are bringing the business in were the ones that were quote unquote doing the crazy loans, the arm loans, the this or that. Like we weren't really doing a lot of that stuff. We were doing more traditional financing in that time. So the job I had was probably more stable than what was going on. Maybe what you hear about in the news. Getting through '08, I was still making decent enough money, 40, $50,000 a year, something like that. Which at 20, whatever, was not terrible. I was still living in my parents' house. I didn't move out till 25 or 26. And when I look back on it, you don't really you don't really know what you don't know, right? You just go with the flow. You're in your lane, you do what you do. You just put your head down, you work. And coming out of '09, we got super busy. And looking back on it, it was a blessing. And you press on the gas pedal and you work more and you work more and you try to have some fun too. But the fear part of it, taking a risk, like purchasing an asset, and that's what I look at today. It's if I'm talking to a first time home buyer and they've saved $25,000 and then they want to think about buying a house today, and there's headlines in the news, oh, okay, there's going to be a market crash, house values are going to go down. So do I really want to put all this money? It took me 5 years to save this money. Do I want to put this into a house and then have it be gone? Like in 2007, I started putting money in with a financial advisor, to $5,000 or $7,000 at the time, which for me that was a lot of money. And then to see it in '08 go 50, 40%, like I had this distrust in the markets at an early age. So seeing the stock market, the house market go down, I didn't have a lot of assets to put in, but I did see a little bit of it go down. And so I remember in 2013 when I bought my second house, I had this gut feeling, okay, what if values go back down? What if there's another pullback? Is this the right time to buy? And obviously, looking back on the next 10 years after that, everything just kept on going. And that's what happens over time, right? You have all these fear mongering, and there's going to be a recession, there's going to be a pullback, there's going to be this, and then there's going to be that. And it's like all you can really do is make the best decision that you can with the information you have. Try to minimize risk in some ways, and live your life. And that's pretty much what I did, and let the cards fall where they fall.
I love it. One of my favorite definitions of risk, I might butcher the quote a little bit, but it's risk is what's left over when you think you've thought of everything. I don't know if you've heard that one, but
I haven't.
it's
I haven't.
it's an
I
interesting
like it.
framing. I heard it from the author Morgan Housel, who wrote The Psychology of Money, and I think he was quoting someone else. It might have been Carl Richard. But anyway, that quote always stuck with me because we as humans have this innate desire to eliminate all unknown things, right? We want to know the outcome of what we're going to do when we do it. And that's just not how the world works, right? We can only really influence the inputs that we have in any decision, and the outcome will play out how it will. We can educate ourselves, we can study the market, we can be disciplined, which is what you teach and what I work with investors on when they're looking to buy their first rental property is how can you be aware of all the potential areas for risk, but you can never eliminate it. And I think that is one of the things that keeps most people on the sideline is that they want a sure thing. And at some point, you have to trust your research, trust your process, and take that risk, right? It's a calculated risk. It's different than just going and rolling dice at the craps table. But yeah, I think that desire to eliminate risk can sometimes paralyze people. And I'm sure that all the time with first time home buyers.
Yeah.
So, how did you
Yeah.
personally, for your own real estate investing, overcome that fear? Not helping others, clients, but you personally.
Yeah. My frame is, so we have a mutual friend, financial firefighter, Marco Shiro, and this is just an analogy. Whenever you talk to him about the next investment or the next deal or a situation, his frame is, I just know I'm gonna figure it out. I know I'm gonna figure it out. And I asked him a question, how do you know that? Just, and his response, I'm blanking on what his response was. Something about it, just experience it. It always does, or whatever. And there's a client that bought a house this year, and I met her, I think, in 2018 or 2019. So it's been like 6 years. And every year she wanted to buy a house, she had some type of reasoning why she didn't wanna buy the house. And looking back on it, she could have bought 4 houses in a time frame and had a massive portfolio, and now she's just buying the first house this year. So just massive amount of opportunity lost, and overthinking and overthinking and overthinking. And I talk about the word trajectory. I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm gonna just give it an extra frame. If I'm talking to somebody who wants to buy their first house or the next house, and they have these thoughts of, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I have some questions or and maybe some fear. I dig into the idea of trajectory. If you have a trajectory where you're working on your job and skills and income, and maybe working on a promotion and working on things to be able to generate more income in the future, your trajectory is going to be at an incline. If you're not doing those things, and maybe your job is at a flat plane or maybe even a decline, then you have less margin for error. If you're on the incline, you have more margin for error. So just an extra frame. Okay, are you working on these things? Because if you are working on these things in time, you're going to have more flexibility in the future to be able to handle things that may come up if you have unforeseen circumstances. And so that's the frame that I knew that I had, because I'm in a commission job. So through experience and doing it for so long, I knew that, okay, maybe if something doesn't go right, I can just work a little harder, work a little smarter, make a right connection, just do one more deal, one more deal, one more deal. And that could pick up the slack, so to speak, if something doesn't go right. And I think analyzing deals and looking at all the options and running metrics and running the calculators and all the time you can spend on analyzing deals, an hour a week, 5 hours a week, 10 hours. I don't know what the time frame is. What if you took half of that time and spent it towards increasing income and building skills? And okay, if you make 100 grand, you make an extra 50, you make an extra 25. And looking back on it, that's what I did in my job, in my sales job, is I pressed on the gas pedal, and that helped me to be able to save more money, have less fear of buying a 4-family. In 2017, I bought 3 properties. I bought 2 4-families and a commercial building that had a rehab. I had the confidence to do those things because I was pressing on the gas pedal from a time period standpoint for years, but in a controlled manner. Like, I was building my skills, I was building my network, I was doing things to be able to build the income that gave me the confidence. This is a confidence game. If you have the confidence to get into the game, you're light years ahead of everybody else. And it's not confidence in buying a $9 property. It can be confidence in buying a $90,000 property. You got to start somewhere. And getting in the game is so important because it changes the framework of everything that you look at life. Just getting in the game is so important. So to me, it's a confidence thing.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Remote Real Estate Academy, the community I launched last year where I personally coach investors and empower them to buy rental properties anywhere in the United States. My business partner Nathan and I have a collective 15 years experience with over 20 cash flowing out of state rental properties. We provide a step-by-step playbook on how you can build your own portfolio and start accessing the life-changing benefits of real estate investing starting today. Go to remoterealestateacademy.com for more info, or better yet, shoot me an email at aaron@aaronamin.com with subject line RREA, and I'll throw in a special bonus for podcast listeners who join the Academy. Now let's get to the show. I love it. Yeah, there's another concept I think of often called the lead domino, right? And it's in order to realize the potential of a sequence of actions, you have to tip the first domino. You have to be willing to do that. And I think a lot of people,
Yeah.
when they think about their first property, it's only going to cash flow $100 a month after expenses, and it's $100,000 property. And I don't see how this is going to lead to building true wealth over time. And that is the first piece of what could become a bigger puzzle. And we own 8 properties now. And we're at the point we've had some of them, the longest one is 7 years, and most of them were about 5 years. And I think you're going through something similar where it's like these things have appreciated to a certain point where you can now consider, do I sell this and reposition into something else? Do I pay one down? Like it starts to become a game of chess, but you
Mhm.
need pieces on the board in order to play that chess. And I think sometimes people at the very beginning, that concept of having a portfolio feels so out of reach that they procrastinate taking the first step. Or one thing that's totally okay also is maybe it's not for them. But I think at some point you either need to get in the game or recognize maybe this isn't for you. And that's where the value of things like communities and mentors, if you're into that. I believe strongly in mentorship myself, because if I can find somebody who's done what I want to do and they're willing to share and their playbook, whether it's paid or not, typically by accessing that knowledge from that person, they're giving you a playbook that has worked, and potentially opening up your network to other people who could potentially help you or provide insight and guidance. And then having a peer community, like how you and I are constantly interacting with other folks that are at a very similar level to us, and we support each other and we know we can reach out with questions. Like that's the type of piece to surround yourself with if you want to conquer some of that fear and anxiety. And that seems like what you've done. And I know, yeah, the fear is such an important element because I think you have to first acknowledge it and validate it. Like it's okay to be afraid, but then you have to attack it and you have to conquer it in one form or another. Let's talk about your portfolio just a little more. So you had you quadplex, you said you bought a commercial building with that you had to do rehab. I know you had been investing for, it sounds like about almost 10 years up until that point, but what gave you the idea to get out of a more standard single family rental into these small multifamily and commercial assets?
Yeah. One is you gotta have cash. Like you have all this Pace Morby, seller financing stuff, people thinking they can build a portfolio with no money down. That's just, it's fool's gold. You gotta make, if you want to be able to do big stuff, you gotta make big money. That's just the way that it is. Or you gotta be in the game for a long time. And so I was making money and I was saving money. And so I had the cash to be able to go buy a couple of 4 families. And being in a network, right? Being around people that, okay, the numbers aren't like amazingly attractive today, but I know in 10 years they're going to look really good. And being around those people talking about the positive and talking about the long term, talking about the game, right? Because when you're in your little bubble, all you're seeing is obstacles, or you can tend to just see the obstacles or the pain points. And sometimes it's not always easy to be able to see the full picture. And so that was helpful for me. And then running a mortgage branch, the commercial building, my partner and I, we bought together to run our mortgage branch out of. So we bought a building, hired a couple contractors to get the work done, and then moved our mortgage operation in there and just grew the branch, into the space. And it was unique at that point in time. But the company that I worked for, Fairway Mortgage at the time, which I'm not there anymore, I was there for 7 years, but a very entrepreneurial company. So that advice came from other people that were in the network at the company. And hey, if you're going to build your own branch, you could think about buying your own space and paying rent to yourself. And so that's what we did. And so taking that advice, seeking out the advice and listening and talking to people, that was a major part of that equation.
Yeah. No, I love that. And so you have mentioned a couple times too that If you can really pinpoint and figure out the why, then the how will figure itself out. And I agree wholeheartedly because sometimes the how changes throughout your journey. I started as very strictly single family, long term rental, straight ahead investing, which I still believe is probably the best foundation for most people as they start their investing journey. But we've now ventured into a couple different types, niche investing. We have some assisted living. We're exploring some sober living homes, and we're also in the process of our first flip. And that's something that we've built up towards, and we have gone into each of those realms for different reasons to supplement the core objective behind our why, which is building a life, enduring wealth for our family, which now has 3 children that we need to save for and build a strong foundation behind. But anyway, the idea of crystallizing your why strong enough that it allows you to feel less pressure on the how. What was your process for really coming to that level of clarity on your own why?
Yeah, when you start to hear the word personal development or self-help or whatever, to me, it's a those are terms that put me off, right? Okay, whatever. Tony Robbins, Stephen Covey, some of these people in my younger years, I'd have been turned off of affirmations and all these different things. Okay, whatever. But I received the information from with a different frame. So this is in 2018, and I remember it very vividly. I was in a, s- I had a coach with Southwestern Consulting, and I've been working with them for 4 or 5 months. And I got to Fairway in 2017, and we had a vision of the plan. And then in about a year, we had to make some changes of how we set up our team and originators and just the flow of leads and business. And so that put me back on the front lines, and I had to get a little bit of a different frame. And so I was going through this internal transition of what I've been putting together, running a business for about a year and a half. And there's a book that my coach recommended called The Power of Consistency, because I was trying to do too many things, just too many different things, different places and different lanes and too many hats. And I needed to really get focused and get dialed in on some things. And so the book is by Weldon Long. He's a 3-time convicted felon and whatever. He comes out of jail and builds a Inc. 500 business and has an amazing story. And he talks about how, with a couple years still left on his term in jail, he came across some of the workings of Stephen Covey and Tony Robbins, and this idea that, hey, your thoughts become your results. Your thoughts lead to your emotions, which lead to your actions, which lead to your results over a period of time. And what you think about every single day, it's a series of zeros and ones. It's either something that's going to serve you or it's not. And the more that it's something that's not going to serve you, it's going to put you into a different trajectory. The more that it's a positive thing that's going to heighten your trajectory, the more it's going to lead you to that direction and the positive emotions and the positive actions and the positive results. So it's literally a series of zeros and ones. And when you're intentional about what you decide to put into your frame, your conscious frame, literally will program your subconscious. And he calls it his prosperity plan, where you identify your vision or goal and action items to get there and review it consistently, several times a day, every day, weeks, months, and you're literally programming your subconscious to reach that goal. And he gives the analogy of like when you're driving home from a long day at work, you've driven that drive so many times that you could be on the phone, go through the drive-through, pick up a carton of milk, and next thing you know, without consciously thinking about it, you arrive home safely. And what if you could take that same effect and instead of programming your home and your destination to get to your house, program your life goals, your relationship goals, your business goals, and program them into your subconscious, and then increase the odds of reaching your goal. And so I was sitting on a plane going to visit family in Houston for Thanksgiving. And for whatever reason, being on a plane just puts me into hyperactive, like working on stuff, writing. I wrote part of my book on a plane. So for me, that's just something where a lot of the ideas come. And I just got to this point like, okay, so if I put this into my brain every single day, what if I double down? What if I quadruple down on this of my goal? Then I'm going to increase the odds of reaching my goal. And so literally, like, if I want to reach this goal, and I do this process, like nothing's going to stop me. I'm going to reach that goal. And then I was able to do some things that I saw proof of concept. Okay, this is working. This is working. So I kept doubling down, and that process just helped me push through all the nonsense. And it's just an ADHD thing. I don't know, but like that's what worked for me.
No, it's amazing. And the inverse of that is that if you don't have if you're not conscious about what's entering your frame, then you are going on a different type of autopilot where you're just letting things come in and out without any real intention. And if you're like, I'm guessing you and I are similar in this regard where we do like to do a lot of different things. We like to try things. And if you're not careful, all of a sudden you're doing 15 things half-heartedly instead of a couple things very intentionally. So I think until you have a realization like the one you just described, it's hard to even understand how much subconscious slippage there is just in your day-to-day life, right? So just bringing a few things into center, into focus can have a completely outsized impact on your ability to accomplish things. And it is funny because I think you mentioned some people, when they hear personal development or self-help, they roll their eyes. And I understand perhaps where that comes from, but I do think a little bit the joke is on you if you think that it's not worth spending time on yourself. I say that not from a place of judgment, but I think ultimately the people who can get past that and actually make those investments in themselves and setting intentional goals are more likely to achieve them. And I would say probably there's a lot of data that backs that up too. And if you surround yourself with people that think the same way, that's even more jet fuel and perspective and people who will help each other achieve those goals. So that's great framing.
There's a mindset coach out there, and it's all about mindset. And that's just, to me, like one way to frame how to help somebody reach a goal, or a business coach, or I help mortgage professionals scale their business, build massive relationships, and become number one in their market. Like, mindset is so general, it can turn people off, but it's just a set of tools to help somebody reach a goal. Like, the best agencies and coaches get so dialed in on their target market, and they solve a problem, and then they use all the things that we're talking about as part of their problem solving, or part of the solution. So I just think it's interesting. Like, you can push a lot of people off with that type of framing of self-help or whatever, but if you get dialed in on the specific avatar, all the same things apply anyway. So side note, but yeah, family. Yeah. Like the podcast, the book, all the social media and stuff that I literally was doing at 9 o'clock at night at the beginning after the kids get down. And when you have kids, you realize how much time you had before that you weren't really using.
Yeah, I feel you. I've got twins. Yours are a bit older. You said they're 4, almost 5 at the time of this recording, and mine are 8 months old, and then I've got a 2.5-year-old daughter. And it's funny because I didn't really start my real consistent content creation journey until we had our daughter. So I had a different type of hustle. I explained a little earlier. I was in the concerts industry, running
Mhm.
and gunning and schmoozing and boozing. And the first chapter of my career prior to having kids, I was out there, but I wasn't working on what I'm working on now. I didn't have my podcast. I didn't have my daily writing habit. I didn't have my newsletter. I didn't have my coaching business, and I hadn't built the real estate business yet. And I definitely think to myself, if I had used some of that time in my 20s before I had kids, it would have been a lot easier to build some of this foundation. But I think one advantage, and I'm curious your perspective here, once you have those constraints and you know that, hey, this time is for my kids, I am not willing to move it. It's important to me. I want to be a good dad. I want to be there. Once you acknowledge those constraints, it forces you to work more efficiently. It frustrates me a lot
Yeah.
because I can't get as much done. So I have to really adjust my expectations and be forgiving to myself. But would you say that now you have kids, 4 years into it and all the stuff you're doing, have these constraints made you work more efficiently, or what is your evolution of your attitude towards time management been since you had kids?
Yeah. There's a couple things. The word efficiently can mean a couple things for when I'm looking at it myself. One, focusing more energy on being intentional with working on the right things that are going to have high impact, high leverage. I had to be more intentional with that part of it. The old Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. And then also putting the work in, the time in different parts of your week or your day, your night or weekend or whatever, having more grace with, hey, like, I know me. I want to be able to build this habit. If I miss a day or 2 or 3 working on this thing, I know myself enough that if I stop working on it, I'm gonna lose that priority in my brain, and it's already outside of the normal scope of things that I need to get done. So I wanna build this habit and keep it going until I finish it. And in some of the other interviews and even my own content talk about James Clear and the Atomic Habits 2-minute rule. Like, for me, I literally had to put on a clock for 2 minutes at the very beginning. Okay, like I've had good days, I've had bad days, days that I would get in and log in and do stuff, and days that I wouldn't. And I'd be beating myself up and the anxiety and stress of I know that I have work to do, but I'm not doing it. I'll just do it tomorrow. That I'll do it tomorrow button. And I got introduced to the book and I was reading it as okay, I'm gonna turn on a timer for 2 minutes and I'm gonna turn it off and after the clock goes off. And so I did that for a couple of days. And okay, if I'm sitting here, I might as well keep on working. And then you do it. And then after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, okay, now getting the kids down at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I'm laying on the ground with them, helping them fall asleep. And then you start to wind down. And it's like, now I gotta ramp my brain back up. And that was part of the anxiety for me. But then after doing that process for a few weeks, it's like now I programmed it into my brain to looking forward to that work. I was looking forward to jumping back up and getting a few things done, even if it's 2 or 3 things or it may be an hour, but like reframing that. And so that for me, that was helpful. And so when I say grace, it's okay, 2 minutes, it's enough. If I do one thing on this, it's enough. Or if I don't do anything at all and I sit on my couch and think, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna put this in my planner. I'm gonna spend a few minutes of being intentional about what I'm going to do tomorrow. Being intentional on taking the good, finding the opportunity instead of beating yourself up about it. And I had to learn that stuff because I'd be very much beating myself up for not doing enough. And I had to get over that and really start to focus on the opportunity that's in front of me, the positives that were there right in front of me, and gratitudes, whatever you want to call it. But that's the stuff that I had to reframe internally.
Yeah. No, I can relate extremely directly to all that. And yeah, trying to find the pockets of time that I have available, that has been a moving target for me, especially since our twins were born, because their sleep was up and down. It still is. And you mentioned like putting them to bed and then it's 9 p.m. and you're like, okay, I have my time to myself, but you're like, I don't have the energy or I don't have the motivation or so there's finding the time and then there's it actually being the right time or not. And so I think for me, the biggest challenge has been managing my own expectations of myself. Like I have my day job. That's a non-negotiable. I have to show up every day and do my job. A lot of the podcast is absolutely a big piece of what I've been building. It's important to me, but in theory, if something were to need to slip to in service of my family or my job, which pays my bills, that's going to be one of the pieces that moves. And so I think that's where I'm the type of person where I want to complete the things that I've committed to, but I had to be more realistic with myself about what is or isn't possible based on where I'm at. And I've come to peace more with that now over time, but it's definitely been a challenge and something I'm sure anyone that has younger kids can probably relate to. So we're coming up on our time here. I want to ask one more question, and I guess that is in the shortest sense, what is the next big target for you? What are your big goals over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, it comes back to I've been in the mortgage industry for so long and I can see what's in front of us right now. There's a massive pain point with millennials, Gen Z, and the next generation of being able to afford homeownership. And for me, it's that part of it, attacking that part of it, creating awareness, creating tools, creating resources to be able to help people that want to be able to purchase a home, to be able to provide the runway. Because if you want to buy a house, it's going to take probably a longer time frame to plan and to budget and to work and to save. And so that's one of the things that I'm working on right now on the Strive platform. The next season that we're rolling out is called 100 Stories of Increasing Income. We've already got 25 interviews done. We've interviewed people in different niches like Amazon. A contractor is building patios on the weekends. One person does tortoise rescuing as a side hustle. Like different examples of ways that people are increasing income. A guide that is associated with that to give somebody kind of a roadmap to get started. And then that's just going to be one of the things we're doing and just promoting the idea of, okay, if you want to get ahead, you got to be focusing on increasing income and skills. And that's the big piece of the puzzle, in my opinion, that's missing.
I love it, and I want to continue to support that message. That's something I believe in strongly. That part of the emphasis behind this show, Hybrid Real Estate Professional, is that you have skills and income and all sorts of different areas of your life you can draw from to enable you to invest in real estate. Sometimes people look for the silver bullet and they say, yeah, I'm just going to quit and start wholesaling, try and make a bunch of quick cash, when actually, for probably the majority of people, the most sensible thing would be to focus on how you can make more income at your current job or potentially find another job to supplement that and then use that to fuel your goals. That's a more tried and true path, and also one that along the way you're going to layer on skills and learn a bunch of new things that can only serve you well in the future. So I love that message. I want to support it. And when does the next season start?
At this point, it's probably gonna be mid-August.
We will make sure to drop all the links, but where can people find you if they would like to get in touch?
Yeah, the best place to get me is gonna be on Instagram, strive for 25 underscore, strive for 25. You can message me there. I'm active there almost every single day, so that's the best place to get a hold of me.
Awesome. I'll make sure to include the links to your social media profiles, your podcasts, etc., in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on. I know this won't be the last time you come on. Looking forward to having you back
Yeah.
again, and best of luck as you enter this new chapter.
Thanks, Aaron. It was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Thank Thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. As you may know, podcasts are very difficult to grow organically. If you're getting value from today's episode, I'd deeply appreciate if you can take 30 seconds to leave my show a 5-star rating and review. This will go a long way to helping me reach more listeners just like you. Thank you so much in advance.